From the dirty to the hyphy bay, to the Big Apple where hip-hop began. We got you covered.
We gonna get on down now.
Real hip-hop, my man. Yo! Breakdown FM.
Davey D hanging out with you this afternoon. We are in the capital of Texas, Austin, Texas. And as everybody knows, all eyes have been on the Supreme Court because of the decision, the landmark decision to allow corporations to have unfettered and unlimited free speech. That has caused reverberations all around the country, all around the world. And we wanted to talk with some people that deal directly with this. I'm sitting with a lawyer. Her name is Ann Llano. She's a lobbyist from Capital City Solutions here at the state capitol, but also somebody who has a long ACLU background. So you've been dealing with this on both sides. And I wanted to talk to you because when this came out, you had noted that this would directly start to impact some of the work that you, many of your colleagues around here are doing, and even some of the highly contested races, in particular a big gubernatorial race that is taking place here in Texas that has gathered a lot of attention. So first of all, welcome to the show and your initial thoughts on the Supreme Court decision.
Thanks, Davey. It's an honor to be talking to you. Well, I think the bottom line is citizens of the United States of America have now lost their place at the table in our democracy. You know, democracy, our whole entire system is set up based on individuals having rights and individuals having freedoms and having a voice. And now corporations are going to outnumber us in dollars by so much that the corporate voices will now overpower the people's voices exponentially, and it's really sad. There's so many different areas it will affect. You know, we've done a lot of work in criminal justice. If you just look at that one area, private prisons will now be able to contribute so much money to candidates. This is an industry that literally feeds off of human bodies, and their motivation is to have as many people in prison as possible. If we have all of our politicians and elected officials now beholden to that, that's easy to imagine how that's going to come out in a few years, and that's just one area.
I wanted to bring that up because I know that's always been your background, has been in the criminal justice world. Right now, people listening would say, well, what difference does it make? Because, you know, these politicians are already answering the corporations and big money interests anyway. Police unions have a tremendous amount of sway on who gets elected and who doesn't. So what difference does this make?
I wish money didn't make a difference, and when you're trying to run a campaign, trying to get an issue heard. But and in the society we live in, money is voice. And there have been, of course, prosecutors, police, private prisons have had a lot of money in the past. But even here in Texas, we've been able to organize different constituents and different groups. And when a lot of people have stood up and said they don't want to have a policy, the elected officials have had to hear that and listen to that. Some elected officials come from areas where their constituents have still able to tell them what to do. The thing about corporate money, I think that's hard for us to see now at this time because we haven't seen it happen yet. It's too big. It's vast. You know, where any one of us can maybe put in $5 or even $100 towards something, they can shovel in $500,000 or $1 million overnight. A corporation can into an issue campaign. So we just haven't seen yet how big this is going to be money-wise, and that kind of dollars can drown out any number of citizens' voices.
As a member of the ACLU, have you all dealt with that type of situation before? And if so, how is that playing out, and what were some of the challenges that you all were looking at in terms of having either one, free speech be limited, or two, having people's voices be drowned out by rules and regulations by larger entities?
You know, that's a great question, because we're already watching on the national scene net neutrality and corporate ownership of media has already been happening, but now it's going to reach a level that we just haven't seen before. And yeah, you would think that if we have the internet, why can't we get our voice out? Why can't I have a website that's just as big as any other website? Well, because our elected officials are changing the rules. So now I can't play the music I want to play on the internet because I will be heavily regulated and fined by new laws that the corporate powers put in place through the elected officials they bought. So even the venues where we thought we could talk before are going to start to get swallowed up. It's just a funny metaphor, but here in Texas, in front of the governor's mansion, when George Bush became our governor, there have always been protests out in front of the governor's mansion throughout history. People have walked on the sidewalk in front of the governor's mansion. When George Bush came to be governor and he brought this into policy as president, he made up an idea called the free speech zone, which is a small chain-linked fence area inside a parking lot 2 blocks away from the governor's mansion. So that's just an example of how you think citizens would have a voice, but as soon as a large institutional entity comes in and puts you inside a little fence, you really don't have a voice. You have a voice inside a small chain-link fence on a parking lot 2 blocks away from the action.
You know, it's interesting that you brought up the net neutrality thing. That's playing itself out right now, and for people who don't know, let me give you an example of how that starts to happen. Many of the civil rights organizations, NAACP, Urban League, Hispanic Caucus, 3/4 of the Congressional Black Caucus, have now been siding with AT&T to get rid of net neutrality. And they've been doing it through very slick marketing campaigns. Get your iPhone, they have these ads that are coming out talking about there's going to be a digital divide enhanced, even though statistics show that, say, for example, Latinos are the largest users of cell phones, which means there is no divide, and all these different types of things. But when I look, and as you know from working as a lobbyist, you go to these events, you look, you see a telecom company that will sponsor an event, and that sponsorship all of a sudden can now be increased 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 10-fold, which means that it all but guarantees that even institutions that we've come to trust may suddenly be beholden more than the constituents that they're supposed to represent. So when I see the NAACP, and this is just me talking, seeing that all of a sudden that they would side with AT&T to get rid of net neutrality, that to me is very disturbing. And it's also an issue that's drowned out by our inability to go on TV, have this big audience, get a simple message across to the public, and let them know that what is being said, digital divide, which is a buzzword, is in fact not really the case.
You're exactly right. There's so many areas where this happens, and in Texas, corporate as it is there already, big business has a lot of power. And one example here, they deregulated the electric industry in Texas.
We know about that in California from Enron.
Yeah, you guys had a whole blackout, and it caused the whole California to go dark for a while. But also here in Texas, people in Texas pay higher electric bills today than anywhere else in the entire country. And the corporations, when they wanted the new rules, promised us deregulation will make it cheaper for you. It's going to be the best thing in the world for customers. We've seen it. We're paying more for electricity, paying 2 and 3 times as much as anybody else in the country because corporations took that over and changed the rules of the game. So when we cling to things we have now under certain rules that give us rights, just remember, the rules are all going to change now. Now that corporations can put their money straight up into electing officials all around the country, say goodbye to the rules that we're used to playing under. And that's why I say citizens have really lost their seat at the table yesterday.
Is there anything that people can do to combat this? Because I hear people saying, well, I didn't vote anyway, it doesn't matter, we'll take it to the streets. Can you in fact really take it to the streets when you have corporate dollars now backing a candidate?
Taking it to the streets was a lot of fun decades ago, but what I would suggest is think about how this happened to us in the first place right now. Why we have that Supreme Court decision yesterday is because of politics. It's because George Bush became the president and was able to put Roberts and Alito into the Supreme Court. So, in other words, actually, through all of us voting and saying no to the politicians at the election box and understanding what side we're voting for. Here in Texas, Governor Perry tries to make it sound like he's populist. So you have to get a little deeper than that. You have to research a little deeper beyond the cover sound bites and the cover stories of these elected officials and realize a vote for him is going to be a vote to institutionalize corporate power. And going for someone else who really is more populist, for instance, with Obama as the president, he's already been able to put one person on the United States Supreme Court. In theory, if he were able to put more in, if we keep him in office, this decision could eventually even be overturned. So it's really not the law controlling, it's us and politicians and politics controlling these decisions.
We've been talking with Ann Llano. She's a lobbyist here in Texas where we're doing the show from this afternoon, giving us some insight. She's also a lawyer and an activist in the Austin area. We're going to take a